right, strap in, everyone, because this time on the deep dive, we are going in deep on Stream, this new indie horror flick.
Okay.
We got like a whole stack of reviews here, and let me tell you, this does not seem like your average slasher. I was going through these,
Yep.
and I don't know, something about it just like grabbed me. And I think even if horror isn't really your go-to genre,
Yeah.
I think you'll find this kind of interesting.
Definitely. Definitely. There's a lot of buzz around Stream, and that 7.2 on IMDb, you know that tells you something. People are reacting to this one.
For sure. So, okay, the basic setup here. The Keenan family, they're heading out on this like idyllic vacation,
Yeah.
you know, remote hotel, beautiful scenery, and classic, you know exactly where this is going, right?
Yeah.
And bam, they're trapped.
Yeah.
Deadly game, orchestrated by, well, let's just say some seriously messed up people.
Sounds familiar, right? But the thing is, these reviews are saying there's like layers here. Apparently, Stream takes that familiar horror setup and does something more with it.
Right. And we're not just talking like, oh, it's good for a slasher. Like, no. One review straight up calls it a must-see for slasher fans. And not because of the gore, which, I mean, come on, you got to have some of that. But this person was blown away by how well they did the story and the characters. I mean, you don't always get that, you know.
No, you really don't. That's such a good point, though, because it's when horror does that, when it goes beyond just the scares, that's when it gets really interesting. I mean, think about it. When you think about really effective horror, the films that stick with you, they usually have those other elements too, right? Like a story that really draws you in, characters you actually care about, or even like deeper themes that make you think. It seems like Stream might be trying to do that too.
Yeah, totally. We did have that one review. I don't know if you saw this one, but it was talking about like the digital abyss of the dark web. And I got to say, that feels completely out of left field compared to everything else we got.
Yeah, sounds like maybe they watched the wrong movie or just wanted to get some of their own stuff in there. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So we're just going to set that one aside, gently back into the internet void where it belongs.
Hope for the best.
But there's this other review, and this is the one that really like made me sit up and pay attention. They call Stream a must-see for slasher fans. But then they go on and on about how good the story and the characters are, which you don't always get in a slasher, let's be real.
No, you're right. You don't. And that is a really crucial point because, like we were saying before, I think the best horror, it uses those elements as a way to get to something else, something more. Like you said, compelling characters, you know, thought-provoking themes, maybe even just a really, really great story. And it sounds like maybe, just maybe, that's what Stream is going for.
It really does. And speaking of going for it, did you see the comments about the gore in this thing?
Yeah.
Like one reviewer was all about the practical effects.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were talking about how even on what seems like kind of a small budget, the filmmakers went all out.
You know, that's really interesting that they went practical, especially these days, right? I mean, so much horror relies on CGI. But when you get those real effects, it just hits different, you know?
Totally. There's just like a rawness there,
Yeah.
a visceral kind of impact.
Exactly. And even if you're not, like, someone who's all about the blood and guts,
Right.
you can still appreciate that commitment to doing it right.
It's like that one part, I don't want to spoil anything for the listeners, but you know that scene everyone's talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Practical effects, man,
Yeah.
they just hit different.
They do. They do. Speaking of things hitting different, we got to talk about the fact that Stream marks the return of, wait for it, Tim Curry.
Are you serious? Oh, man, this is not just some slasher flick. This is Tim Curry.
Back at it.
This is like Rocky Horror Picture Show. This is it. I mean, come on.
Legendary.
Exactly.
For those who might not know the name, although I can't imagine, but just the fact that he's in this movie, it adds a whole other layer, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, what drew him to a project like this?
Right. And for our listener out there, I'm curious, would you be more likely to check out a movie, even if it wasn't, like, usually your thing, if you knew someone like Tim Curry was in it?
That's a great question. And you know what else has me curious?
What's that?
The ending. Several of these reviews mention some kind of surprise ending, something that happens during the credits.
Ooh, that's interesting. Post-credit scene? Maybe setting up a sequel?
Ooh.
Or maybe just one last scare to really leave people thinking about it?
Or maybe it's something else entirely, right? Like, we have no idea.
We're going to have to watch it and find out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No spoilers. But speaking of things to think about, there was this other thread running through these reviews, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but they kept mentioning, like, themes, deeper meanings. Did you get that sense at all?
Yeah, they kind of danced around it, didn't they? Like, there were mentions of family dynamics, the dangers of isolation, that kind of thing. And then this idea of, like, facing your fears head on. But what I thought was really interesting was how they connected it all back to the tech.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just like technology IS scary. It's how it plays into all this other stuff.
Exactly. Like, the technology in the film, it's almost like a catalyst, right? It pushes the characters, puts pressure on their relationships, forces them to confront these bigger issues.
Ooh, I like that.
And, it's not a new idea for horror, but the reviewers seemed really impressed with how Stream handles it.
I mean, it makes you think, right? Like about how reliant we are on technology these days and how easily things can go wrong, spiral out of control.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you think about it like that, Stream could get under your skin in a really, really effective way.
Right. Because that's what good horror does, right? It reflects our own fears, our own anxieties back at us.
Ugh, it's so true. So we've got good characters, we've got these deeper themes going on, we've got the practical effects,
Yeah.
and of course, Tim freaking Curry. This movie, Stream, is sounding like one wild ride. So, okay, we've thrown a lot of stuff at the wall here about Stream, but bottom line time, is this one worth adding to the list? Should we clear our schedules?
Well, if we're going just on what we've seen here, it definitely seems like Stream is more than just another forgettable slasher. Like, it brings the scares. Yeah, we know it's going to be gory, but it sounds like there's real heart to it, too.
Totally. And the characters, the themes we were talking about, those practical effects.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention Tim Curry coming back to horror, and that ending, that mysterious ending.
Right. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
I mean, you look at how much horror is out there, it feels like every other movie. But Stream seems different, Blending those old school effects with a story that actually makes you think, and
Yeah.
then that touch of nostalgia with Tim Curry. Man, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of hooked.
100%. It's like tapping into those fears about technology, about being isolated, but then giving you a story you can really sink your teeth into. Plus, I got to know about that ending. Who doesn't love a good twist?
Right. Sounds like the filmmakers really put everything they had into this one, and it shows.
For sure. All right, listeners, there you have it. That's our deep dive into Stream. Now it's your turn. Check it out. Let us know if it lives up to the hype. And for the love of all that is horror, tell us what you think about that ending. We are dying to know if it's as crazy as everyone says. Until next time, happy viewing.